Okay, so today, January 25th, we are going to talk about buyers and all that takes in. And in fact, even this weekend, I showed buyers a home and we went to tour the home and I was pointing things out to them and that sort of thing. There's some things that as you're a homeowner, you kind of pick up, but when you're in the industry, you also pick up as well. For instance, I never knew that the average HVAC system has around a 20-year lifespan. So after 20 years, it'll probably need to, at a minimum, need to be serviced, should be serviced every year, just maintenance check. But it should be looked at, and eventually you're probably going to need something replaced. And like this home that I showed is in kind of an extreme weather area. So I said, most likely, this air conditioner won't go beyond its lifetime. And the seller told us that the air conditioner was 15 years old. So I just let the buyers know, hey, in about 5 years, you may have to replace something on this unit. So, that's just one of those things that as you're walking through buyers, that's a little bit of your value add, that you can put in there. By the way, one of those things, when you do a home warranty, if the home does have an HVAC unit, the home warranty, most of them will include a regular maintenance on that. And so you can go ahead and call them out there and you do it through the home warranty and they'll do the maintenance on it and just check it out. And so that's something that can be really helpful. So I was going to dive into a couple of things today about that. I put together a packet a while ago, so I was going to go through that packet, and then afterwards, maybe hit a few other things. We'll see how we do on time. So this was, this is just my pretty cover sort of thing. Yay! So when I print it out, it all looks pretty. And then I just put some things in there. One of the things is you're helping your buyer understand what they're purchasing and what they're getting into. One of the things is they're buying into a lifestyle. And so whenever you look at your buyer and they're asking you questions, one of the things that you're going to talk about is you're buying into this lifestyle. So for instance, let's say it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, just like mine. I'm right in the middle of a suburb. I'm 5 minutes from 3 different freeways. I have different grocery stores to choose from. I've got restaurants around me. I've got a reservoir area that literally I can go across the street and walk the dogs. So that's the lifestyle that my home affords. Great. What if I'm in the Hollywood Hills and it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home? Well, now that's a whole other ballgame, because everything is going to be a drive. So did you want the 7-Eleven down the street? Well, not so much, because that's going to be a drive. Did you want multiple grocery stores to choose from? Well, everything you're going to drive to. However, you're probably not going to get the traffic. You're probably going to have a quieter area you're living in. You may have more acreage. You may have a view. So all those different things, that's the lifestyle that home is affording. What if somebody's going into a condo, okay, or a townhome, anything like that? Well, then they're going into a lifestyle where they are living in very close proximity with other people. At the same time, they're not worrying about yard maintenance, and they're not worrying about outside maintenance and all those other things that come with it. And then there's community things that they don't have to do any maintenance for. There's a pool usually on some of these places. There's a community. So all that stuff, that is what they're buying into. So when you're talking to people, that's the kind of stuff that you're having that conversation with them. Remember, any home that you purchase, you're buying into that lifestyle. You're buying into that neighborhood. So if you're getting somebody that really wants to start that journey, this is one of those areas that you can do it. So get to know the neighborhood. What if they don't know the neighborhood at all? Okay, well then, drive around. What's around it? What's going on? Um, Even ask them questions. Are there things that you want to be around? Are there things that you don't want to be around? What's important to you about a neighborhood that you would like to live in? All of those lifestyle questions are going to mean something. Now, you can talk about schools, and you can tell people what school district they're in, but you kind of want to keep it just at that. You don't want to tell them. You can tell them what school district is in, because that'll come up on like title and other things. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that's the school they're going to that's in close proximity. So you never want to promise the school the kids are going to. And the quality of the school, you can let them look up those things. Things like crime rate, quality of schools. You can point them to where they can get that information, but don't give them that information. I know you're wanting to be really helpful as an agent, but those are some of the things that's their due diligence to find that stuff out. Because if it doesn't meet their expectations, if you give them what the neighborhood is a safe neighborhood, and then their tire gets slashed or something like that, then it's like, oh, well, Ashley told me it was a good neighborhood. Well, if Ashley points you to the crime stats, then she didn't tell you it was a good neighborhood. She can just say, hey, by the way, here's a place where you can look up that information. My experience has been a lot of times they don't look up the information all the time. Every once in a while they will. But it's best just to do that. And you can just say, hey, you know what? I'm here to help you and advise you in the real estate transaction. There are some things as a buyer is your due diligence. So I have no problem pointing you in the right direction. But then that's something for you to find. And every time I've phrased something like that, I put it that way, my buyers understand, okay, no problem. That's what they're going to do. What is what type of neighborhood do they want to be in? Actually, I got to update this, because some things like family type, we don't say anymore. You can tell this I actually put together years ago. But I guess it's good that it's in here, because don't put that in. You don't want to, otherwise the Fair Housing Act that we recently just started including on all of our contracts, things like if you were to say, oh, this is a great family neighborhood, technically it's being biased against people who don't have families. So that's why you don't always say that. You could say, oh, this neighborhood is great for having friends and family over. Well, then that's different, because then it's implying that, kind of anybody, sort of thing. I know it's a nuance, but that's kind of the way it is. And then, what's the proximity to, like, I love my neighborhood, but we're not around LACMA, and what if people are like, no, I love being around, a lot of museums. I love being around theater, live theater. I love being around that kind of thing. And so that may be some of the other things. What if they're big golfers? What if, all of those things can take into place. And you're going to have some buyers that will have the means to say where they want to live and then move in that area. And you're going to have other buyers that will just be, hey, we just want to get into a home. And that's what we want to do. And then even some, like the buyers that I showed them a home on Sunday, they can afford a first-time home buyer home in Whittier, in the surrounding cities, but they can't be terribly picky. They can pretty much buy just an average home, and that's fine. But they do have family that lives out farther in the Inland Empire. So that's where the home we wanted to see, because they actually want a home that may have a little bit more land, that has some acreage that they can raise. They have bunnies, and they would like to get a dog. And so they would like to have a little bit of roam, area, and they like to garden, and they like to plant, and they like to do all of these different things. And so, and they also like a quiet, just serene lifestyle with hills around them. So they had to go farther out in the Inland Empire. So for the same price, it's a much larger home, and it has a lot more acreage. So that's some of the conversations you have with them. And that was a conversation I have with these buyers. I talked to them. We looked at homes around the area. but they said, you know what, we really, our dream home would be somewhere in the Inland Empire that would have these things, that's closer to some of our family members. And we don't mind the commute for us. And by the way, our daughter who will be going to college and our second daughter who will be going to college are going to college out in the Inland Empire. So for them, half of the family, it'll be very close to where they'll be driving to. So all those things could put together. We looked up homes in the Inland Empire, and that's the one they saw. In fact, that's the home we made an offer on. So we're waiting back. Property values. We, right now we're heavily in, as you know, a seller's market, and property values are going up. But as a steady rate, you're looking at an appreciation since the early 1900s of about 4.1%. And that's taking into account even the 2008 crash, all the dips, and everything. That's the average. So it's always been a good investment. Now, one question would be, well, and this is, you may get asked this, well, my buyers want to buy the home and sell it in a year. So does that sound good? Well, a home is going to appreciate, but at the average appreciation value, usually they don't build up enough equity to make up for the closing costs and all the different things that, if there's a loan involved too, all those different things that they come out ahead. It's only if there's something in there that they need to move. Once they start hitting about 3 to 4 years, that's when it starts to break even, and then they do start to come out ahead. So I had a conversation with a buyer years ago on this, where she said, well, I'm going to be out here. She worked for the Four Seasons, and she said, I'm going to be out here for a year managing the Four Seasons in this area, and then they're going to transfer me. Should I buy? And I was honest. I said, no. I said, it's really not going to be worth your investment, because by the time you sell, you're still not going to recoup some of that money given our projections. And I said, and there was a chance too that they may turn it into a 5-year. And then we started continuing the conversation, because at that point, I said, at that point, it would be worth it for you to buy something now and then sell it at the end of the 5 years. And so that's why we had the property value sort of growth talk. And then future growth. The other thing is, if they're what are they wanting to do? And future growth, more it's just future, because, well, what are they wanting to do in the future? What if they're an older couple and they've already, raised the kids, or they just simply want to downsize, period. So maybe their future growth is they do want to get into a townhome that's, 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, and no outside maintenance. That's their dream, because now they can go travel or do whatever else they want to do. And they don't have to worry about the outside of the home. That may be it. It could be that you have a couple that they have a kid, and maybe they want more kids, or like the buyers I mentioned the other day, their 2 daughters are in high school currently, but they'll still be living at home for a while. But their future growth is they want more animals. So, and they want to retire somewhere eventually, so for them, that was their future. That's what they were looking at. So those are the conversations you have, and then it just helps you take it in. Plus, when you ask these questions of your buyers, you're valuing them. You're letting them, we've talked about this before, it's kind of the open-ended questions, but you're asking them, what's important to you? And then that's what we'll figure out what we can find for you. And usually when I do have conversations like that, I try to, I don't always, but I try and make that some of those questions are the first type of questions that are what I like to ask, because it's very easy, and I fall into it all the time. Well, what do I need to do? Well, first you need to get pre-approved. And I all of a sudden start going into logistics, instead of me asking a few of the questions like, well, what are you looking for? What kind of lifestyle do you want? And asking some of those, and then bringing that in. Yeah, I need to, and I'm being very open here, I need to work on my sandwich effect approach. You sandwich something. So you put something soft on this side, soft on this side, and you put the hard meat in the middle. And so, you can ask, well, what areas have you been looking for? What some of the things, what kind of neighborhoods are you looking for? Okay, great. And then I could easily transition. Well, what do you think your price is? And in asking that, have you talked to a lender on that? Well, no, we haven't. Okay, well, that's some of the things we need to talk about and so on. And we'll put that together. And then afterwards, we'll go ahead and we'll look at what your budget is. And then we can start to narrow down on some other things. But while we're on the conversation, how many bedrooms are you looking for? And how many baths are you looking for? And then I would do that. That would be a sandwich effect of just packaging it very nicely to have that conversation. And of course, you're going to know the situation better than anybody. So nothing is ever in this industry a one size fits all. So you're going to have some buyers that you already know. And so, your conversations are going to be a little bit more guided in that way. Then you're going to have other buyers that you don't really know at all. They've been introduced to you somehow. And in that regard, you're going to probably have to go through everything and kind of get to know all this stuff. If these are just some home buying guidelines, these are the things that I go, by the way, here's some tips and things in there. And, if you're making this a buyer consultation, let's say you were to take this and you were to make it a buyer consultation. In fact, if you want, I can even upload this in the chat. So that way it makes it easy for you guys to have access to this. Second. To get my computer to agree to let me do this. Sorry, guys. Okay. And that's a simple PDF. And again, you can just go into it and break it apart and do whatever you want to do. This is an industry where everybody is borrowing from everybody, which sometimes is good. Sometimes, the people you're borrowing from, they don't know what they're doing. So sometimes that's not. You got to use your own guidance on that. But, you can point out some of these things. By the way, if you plan to resell, don't buy an unusual house. Like I mentioned, I had a client that 5 years. Hey, that's going to be a unique house to sell. So don't think it's going to turn around, and sell quickly. So we may be looking at something that's a little bit more, not cookie cutter, but something that more is closer to cookie cutter. Let's even just put it that way, as opposed to that one unique home or, wow, this is so special. Okay, well, then that may take a little bit longer. Now, and even if some people are like, you know what, I don't really care about the school district. I don't care about, some of those things. Okay, that's understandable. However, if you're looking at reselling the home, or if you're looking at the value of a home, then to another buyer, those things may matter. So just keep those things in mind. If people are looking at buying any brand new construction, usually brand new construction right now, you want to get everything verified, but usually like brand new construction comes with a 10-year warranty. Yay. But then it also means that sometimes it's higher out-of-pocket expenses and there is no negotiating. It's just, that's the price and that's what you pay. Some people love that because they get into a brand new home. They don't have to worry about maintenance. They can spec everything out. No, I want that countertop. I want this. I want that. I want this. And if anything's wrong, they can easily get it, taken care of. Other people know they'd rather get into a home that has been around for a while. Some people don't like new construction. Some people like older homes. Some people, I have a mid-century modern. My home was built in 1957. And I have throughout my house, the original oak floors. And some people are like, no, I want those old, rich wood floors. And that's what they're looking for. So all those things combined, that's some of the things that you're going to have those conversations with. People will sometimes ask and say there are no perfect homes. So you need to help them understand that, hey, there's things that, you want to you want them to help understand like what's a priority and what's not a priority. Now, let me give you a tip on that. If you do something like that, what you can do is you can easily create a document, and you can do, in fact, let me just, I'm going to switch over to just a Word document so you guys can see. Okay, so you can do at the top, you can do once, and then you can do needs. Okay, and then when you help them walk through this, you can say, look, a want can be, oh, we would love to have 4 bedrooms. Then we can use one as an office. But right now, we really just need at least 3 bedrooms. We would want a pool, but it's not necessary. You know, we need to have, you can have 2, you know, plus bathrooms. We really want at least 2.5. So that way we have a guest bathroom when people come over. You know, one can be, we would love, you know, an enclosed patio. But we actually really do need 2 living spaces, like a family room and a grand room, living room, all of those sort of things. And what you're doing is you're helping them to narrow down, because if they look at a home and the home could be a weird layout, you know, it could be next to an alley and they don't want to be next to an alley, but it has 4 bedrooms and a pool. It's like, yeah, but that place has 4 bedrooms and a pool. Well, if you break this down and you say, okay, well, let's look at your wants versus needs, and if you do it beforehand or afterwards, you can help go back to this list and say, okay, but you said that was a want and not a need. So is that big enough to overcome that? Is that something where, you know, you can, is that something where that outweighs that other home we saw that was, you know, 3 bedrooms with a den and but no pool? And that's where you can have those conversations and you help them to kind of narrow that down. Now, I sold a home a year ago in December, and it was to a family, and for them, they had a bunch of things. Their wants were, they wanted at least, they really wanted 4 bedrooms. And they also wanted a junior master, because they wanted, in case the mother-in-law, they figured that the mother-in-law eventually was going to move with them, in with them. They would like for the mother-in-law to have its own bathroom. Okay, great. Some of the things they knew they needed was they would need at least 3 bedrooms. That was a minimum. They needed at least 2 bathrooms. They also wanted a home that was going to be great for family events. So those were some of the things that they really needed. They also wanted a neighborhood that they felt like their sons could play in the yard. So I'm going to put, you know, kid friendly. That would be one of those things. What we discovered in this process, because when we first started looking for homes, they had a lower budget in some regards than what you would find, because they were looking in the Whittier area. So they had a lower budget that would let them get a lot of these things. And the homes we were looking at, there was one home that was like technically 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. No, sorry, I take that back. 3 bathrooms, but it was a weird layout. They added on and they did weird things to this home, and it was awkward, and it wasn't done well, and you would have to rip out a lot of stuff. You were right on top of your neighbors. I mean, it was just a train wreck, to be honest. I mean, that's what it was. The one thing that, because we went through a list like this, that became, we realized for them at least, was a want, was, but not a need, was location. And once they started realizing, okay, we probably can't afford in the Whittier area everything that meets our needs. And we realized that we can adjust on the location. As soon as that happened, we started looking at other homes, and then we found them the home that they really wanted. And it even had more than what they had requested. But they realized that the location wasn't the need. And so it helped them to refine that down. Does that make sense? Am I tracking with you guys on that one?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So, and by the way, I did that, of course, right now on the computer, but you can take out an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper and do that. I mean, that's one of those easy peasy things you can do. Okay. So, and those are the things you can go through. I mean, if I go through everything, you can see the entire list on here. You want them to always do an inspection on a home. You want them to be educated as much as possible before they buy. Just don't pull the trigger. Because a lot of times people pull the trigger and they get into it, and then they think like, oh, I'm so excited. Oh, did we make the right decision? Should we have taken more time? So do that ahead of time, sort of thing. Help them understand, there's some tips in here that they can read through, and you can read through, and this is really helps where you can just take a highlighter and just highlight something. If you've gone through a vacant home, they tend to look bigger just because they're not furnished. Imagine their stuff in a home if a home is staged instead of the staged furniture. I know I'm primarily a listing agent, so I stage homes all the time. However, if I have a buyer coming in, I just remind them, hey, this looks great because it shows you how the home could be laid out, but imagine your items in this home, and help them to understand that, sort of thing. It even, like, I had somebody that was downsizing recently, and it helped them understand, oh, they're not taking their one couch with them, because the home that they're going to end up in, they had this huge, beautiful Ethan Allen couch. There's no way it's going to fit into the home they're moving in. So that was one of those that helped them to understand, like, yeah, I just can't fit that in there. A good tip in there, like you could put in, right now I'm waving right in there, buy the best home you can afford in the best neighborhood you can afford. It's better to be the least expensive home in a great neighborhood rather than the most expensive home in a bad neighborhood or not as good of a neighborhood, because your neighborhood's going to always, the home is always going to appreciate much better. We also talk about, sometimes you may show a buyer a home, and that's when you can have a conversation afterwards. Oh, they kind of overspent, for the area. I love my area. I love my home. But if I were to put in marble countertops, not be as appreciated in my home as opposed to some of the higher end homes in the hills. And that's just the way it is. So that's one where I would have overbuilt. I would have overspent, putting in a lush fountain in the back with, a koi pond and ducks in it probably would be overbuilding for my area. Anyways, here's the list that you can go through. You want to walk them through some of these things. And by the way, this is all one packet, right? Or you can give them one sheet at a time. You can copy and paste and do whatever you want to. This is a thing that's an ongoing sort of conversation you're having with clients. This is one that I really like. And this is where I give it to them, and nobody's ever filled it out because I've modified this when we actually go see a home, but it's in here because it helps them to understand that here's a property worksheet. And so I talked about wants versus needs. This is also a great way of them rating the property. And so they can go ahead and they can add up and like, well, what do they like? And you can see all the different things about the about the property. Some of it is very subjective. You know, what do you think of the view? What do you think of the landscaping? You know, what do you think of these things? Other things are actually the condition. You know, how's the foundation? How's the roof? You know, all of that sort of thing. Again, the home that we saw on Sunday, I was telling the buyers, I said, okay, let me tell you the bad things first I see about the home. And there actually weren't a lot, but you know, one of the things I brought up was the roof isn't brand new, but the roof is in good condition. So I'm thinking, you know, you have a number of years left on the roof, and we'll see what the inspector says, but it isn't a brand new roof. So just understand that. And they were like, okay, no problem. You know, they kind of got that. It's in an area where there is no natural gas lines. So, and they do have a propane tank, and the only thing that's on propane is the heater. So I said, you'll just have to get used to adjusting cooking with electric in the kitchen. And they said, okay, you know, yeah, that we can adjust to. So that, you know, that's some of the stuff that we evaluate. And here's like the comparison list there. And you can see, by the way, you can Google lists like this and get all different types of lists. But I'm going to show you something that I do on another list. Here's one that really helps, though, that does help with buyers. When you're talking first-time home buyers, and it's like, well, what do they need to apply for a mortgage? Well, here's some of the basic things that a lender is going to ask you. They're going to ask you for social security number and your birth date. They're going to ask for a paycheck. You know, how much money are you making? They're going to ask for your tax forms. They're going to want to know your employers. They want to know your accounts. They want to know your current assets. They want to know your current, your property that you own. Is there anything that has like high in value, and it could be real estate property, or, you know, what if you have the James Bond car in the very first film and it's in mint condition in your car? Oh, that may be worth some money. So, you know, they want to know all those things. They want to know, what are your liabilities? What are your debts is what they're wondering. You know, do you have, are there any things? And by the way, you don't collect this information. This is what the lender is going to collect. But these are the sort of things you can prepare them to say, hey, this is what you'll need to get to the lender. I have, and you will eventually run across some realtors that will say, oh no, I need this information and we'll get you the loan. And sometimes what they're doing is they have somebody they know who is a lender and hooking them up directly. And that's not always kosher. I've even heard a few realtors say, you have to use our lender in order for you to work with me, or in order for you to get this home. That's not true. And actually that's unethical, and the Department of Real Estate would come down on them heavily with fines, but unfortunately it happens out there. So when you do have a list like this that you're presenting to people, you let them know, hey, here is the list of things that the lender is going to ask you. And you can always offer a lender. It has been my experience that most of my buyers, I offer them a lender, such as our in-house lender, Andy, and that's the lender they work with. And yay, sort of thing. However, there are times, a few times I've had to go outside for a lender. Andy does not handle VA loans. So when I've needed a VA loan, I have somebody that handles that. So then I'll refer them out, you know, to the VA loan person. But you can only refer to a lender. If they want to go with another lender, or, you know, for whatever reason, or they already have a lender, then that's who you can work with. Speaking on lenders, whenever you're talking about the online lenders, you know, such as Quicken Loans and a lot of those sort of lenders, those lenders are known to be difficult to work with. You're pretty much a number. Good luck on them closing even on time, many times, because for them, it's just a numbers game. And many times, because I've had a buyer decide to go on their own, and they started working with one, and they never got the same person whenever they talked to them. And there wasn't that consistency, and there wasn't the communication. And they said, oh, but they promised me this rate. Okay, how good is that rate to you if you're not going to be able to close on the home and get the home? They're promising you that rate to get you in there, but it's just a numbers game. And many times they're not going to get back to you. And so you want to, if those conversations come up, those are some of the things, especially in this market where people are wanting shorter and shorter times. Lenders such as Andy, not a big institutional lender, but like the smaller lenders like that who do their own underwriting, who have direct communication with their underwriters, and therefore they get things done quicker. They're the ones that can actually get the loans done quicker and promise those shorter times, as opposed to somebody like, let's say, the big boy banks, Wells Fargo, those kind of places. Those loans, many times, they're going to take a while, and they can also be more difficult to qualify for. If you have somebody that's also a tough situation, buyer, where they really want to get a place, but there's something there that makes it a little bit tougher. Your smaller lenders such as Andy, and by the way, Andy's big, but I mean, compared to Wells Fargo, okay, there's a difference there. But they can actually do that. I can give you an example. My neighbor across the street, she needed to refinance her home. She just walked into Wells Fargo and they told her flat out no. So she asked me, she goes, Rob, I don't know what to do. She goes, we have to refinance and everybody's turning me down. I said, well, let me put you in touch with Andy. Andy was able to get her refinanced, and she was able to work that out. And it literally saved my neighbor $2,700 a month. So that's the kind of stuff that can be done with the smaller lenders as opposed to some of the big banks, because people not in our industry, they just don't know, and they're like, oh, every loan is the same, and it's really not. Some of the other things is they're going to want to know all the addresses you've lived at. Let's say you've moved a number of times. Of course, the lender's going to want to know that. There's going to be some special situations. And one of them I mentioned, a VA loan. You're also going to have to bring what's called a DD 214. Don't ask me what that is, but whenever I've asked a veteran for that, they know what that is. So that's what that is. Self-employed, or commission sort of person, such as us, if you're on a commission basis, well, then you're going to need to bring your tax forms along with you. And even sometimes on a regular salary person, they'll ask for the tax forms. Or if there's a separation or divorce, if there's child support, all those different things, the lender wants to know that to actually do the loan. Any questions on those?
Rob, when a listing agent asks for proof of funds, what exactly would you provide for that?
I would tell them mind their own business. On proof of funds, anything that shows that the money is there. Anything that shows that the money is there. So excellent question. The easiest thing are bank statements, but if they have a 401k and that's where they're pulling it from, you want a copy of that. You also want, though, with a 401k, you want it to be specific. With a 401k, a lot of people think, and understandably so, oh, I've got, because I had a buyer that did this, I've got $37,000 in my 401k, therefore I can put down $37,000. Oh, wait a minute there, sunshine. Your 401k many times will only let you take out a certain amount. So in this person's case, they were only allowed to take out, I think it was 66%, 2/3 of their 401k is what they could take out. So it wasn't the 37,000, it was less than that. And so then that's what we had to work with, because their thinking at the time was I was pre-qualified for 500 and I think it was $90,000. I have $37,000 in my 401k. Therefore, I can make an offer up to $627,000. Like, oh, no, let's back up there, because one, can you take that money out? And then two, we have closing costs. We have other things that you're going to have to pay in this process as well. So any of those things, if you have somebody that's doing a promissory note, then you want a signed letter. Let's say the aunt and uncle or something is saying, hey, we are gifting $30,000 to, and my buyers this weekend, that's the situation they're in. We're gifting $30,000 to blah, blah, blah for the purchase of the home. That's proof of funds. that's something that shows like, hey, okay, there's money that's going to be there that's going to help that process through. And a question comes up with that: should they transfer it into my account? No, because if they transfer it into your account, anything over $10,000 gets like, hey, why is $10,000 going from here to there? And they have to track it and they have to do all of those things. It's better to do the promissory note. And then once escrow is open, these relatives or friends or whoever they are, they transfer the funds directly into escrow, because then there's not the investigation. Then it's like, nope, they promised them $30,000 for a deposit. There goes the $30,000 into escrow for that deposit. That's
So a full, sorry, so a full credit report would not suffice.
no, because a credit report doesn't say what assets they have. They can have great credit and have $1.25 to their name. Also, great question there, because my buyers they're great family, but because of some situations, their credit, one is the one spouse, the credit is fair, and the other one, the credit is good, but not great. And in the MLS, it stipulates that please send proof of funds, please send pre-approval letter, and please send the RPA, the residential purchase agreement, to blah, blah, blah. They didn't ask for credit scores. So I'm not sending their credit scores, because in this case, the credit scores are not going to help us. Now, let's say their credit scores were all in the mid 700s. Yes, I would also send the credit scores, sort of thing. So that's where, you use a little bit of what is asked for, what is there. And even if they were asked for, I would still use my own judgment on on credit scores, would I send it or not? Proof of funds, if I don't get proof of funds and I'm a listing agent, I'd be at least asking for them, or I may not even consider it, because like the agent didn't even include it and I asked for it, then that's where I'm a little bit like, what else are they not going to follow through on?
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, I have this in here. This is something that is kind of one of the things. By the way, when you see a lot of stuff, you're going to see different terms and uses in there. This is one of those great things. So here's the insider way that us realtors look at it. And this is what that means. And so you can put all that kind of stuff in there. Yay. Then people will say, well, what about pocket listings? Well, pocket listings are literally, it's a sort of thing where somebody has a listing, but it's not on the MLS, so it's not searchable. Those are the kind of things you can say, well, I can talk to people in my office, but those only are through that kind of communication, and I can reach out to people, but why don't we continue to look for what's available out there? And I have investment buyers that will say, well, just let me know when there's any pocket listings I should know about, because I know about everything on the MLS. Okay, so that's an investment buyer. But my residential purchase people, it's like, okay, what are we searching for? Because they have a need. If you've had that conversation, you know why they're wanting to buy, and so we're going to still go ahead and pursue that. And these are the things like, okay, you're going to make an offer. So go ahead and talk about the condition of the home. Now, this is kind of a generic list here, where the price and so on, and you take into account all the different things for a home. We're in a highly competitive market right now. So if the home is in great condition and there's multiple offers on there, and let's say the home is listed at $899, don't put in $850, because if they're getting other offers in, then most likely you won't be one of the ones countered. And so you need to you communicate with your buyers. Hey, you think of it, and then you always put the people in the other shoes. If you were the seller and you got in, you're asking $899 for the home, and we looked up the comps, and probably the home is worth about $893. So they're asking around the price, and we know they're getting other offers. Probably the other offers are going to be at that $899 or even above. So if we put in an offer at $850, what do you think the sellers are going to think? And this is where everybody is different. You'll have, reasonable buyers that will say, oh, you're right. You know, we probably should at least put in at their list price and even ask if they're going to counter, you know, and that's where you try to have a conversation with the listing agent and find out, are they doing counters, you know, all of that sort of thing. You'll have some buyers that will say, nope, I want to still get a buy in this market. So I want 850. Well, okay. So, but you have the conversation on the price, you know, and all the different things that have asked the price. You let them know that, hey, the earnest money is the money that goes down. Now in California, it's 3% down is the standard, simply because if things go awry and somehow the seller is able to, because the buyer couldn't fulfill their obligations, and they have to cancel, and it's not a cancel within the contingencies, they just have to cancel, and then the earnest money deposit is kept, that can only be 3% max anyway. So that's the reason why 3% is usually what everybody does, because why are you going to put more down unless you want to show that it's a really strong offer? But, and you can do that, by the way, you know, you can easily put more down to show that, hey, we have the money backing up, it's a strong offer. However, the earnest money, they're only going to keep 3% of it anyway. And a lot of buyers don't like doing more than what they need to, because they're having to tie up that money. Earnest money deposit is the initial deposit that's put into it. By the way, it doesn't mean, like, let's say the loan is based on 20%. It doesn't mean that, oh, I don't have to do the 20%. No. That means then that the additional 17% is going to come in at the close of escrow, or at the, you know, towards the end of escrow, that money is going to be coming in. But the 3% is the earnest money deposit. And the way the seller keeps that, by the way, is if the there's no contingencies left. So there's no reason why the buyer can just say, I'm out, and they still say, I have to cancel. At that point is when the seller is, hey, our contract is completely executed. There are no contingencies left, and now you're canceling. Okay, my compensation is that earnest money deposit. And it's not as easy as you think. And there's a number of things that go on with that. But that's the principle of it. The reality is, both parties have to agree to release the deposit, and, you know, then, okay, getting the buyer to do that is one thing. And then also, it gets a little bit complicated and hairy if they're wanting to put the property back on the market and open up another escrow when they're still trying to work this stuff out. So that's a little bit of a, you know, that gets into the thick of it, and that's not for today. You know, the other things is, you're going to want to do, you know, if there's a financing contingency, the financing, of course, is, hey, making sure that the loan can get done. That'll be that's 17 days now. Contract just changed. Inspection 7, everything 17 almost. The inspection is 17, and the loan contingent, the appraisal is that as well. There's the appraisal contingency. That's where, you know, hey, the home didn't appraise for what we thought it was going to appraise for, therefore we're canceling. So that's where in this market, we're ending up with a lot of appraisal gaps. And that's where some of those conversations come into play, because, you know, let's say the home is appraised at $899. Your offer was at $950. Therefore, the loan's going to be $899. Well, then that means that your buyer has to supply that $51,000 difference. So that's an appraisal gap. And that's a conversation you have with your clients if you go above what you think the home is going to appraise at. The disclosures, that's the inspection contingency. And then the idea of, like I said, there's multiple offers out there. So you want to make sure that your offer is competitive with that. We've gone over this list before. There's no way I'm going to cover this in 8 minutes. So I think we'll cover this in another one. What I want to continue on is, and by the way, here's some guides that are in there, and you can copy and paste this stuff out of there. And again, you can even take each one of these things and make it into part of an newsletter, part of a like this, the 3 weeks out, if you wanted to make a newsletter and send it out weekly and, you know, have a section in there of like, hey, if you're a buyer and you were planning to move, here's a start time. Hey, here's 5 weeks out. Hey, you know, the next week, it's like, now you're 4 weeks out. You could play with it. You could do whatever, you know, this is, I literally and copied and pasted this from somebody and, you know, I put it together and then gave it to people. And then if you want to give a bio, you can give a bio. I made mine a little bit fun where, you know, it's like, here's my team. My team are my kids, you know, that kind of thing. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. That I don't do as much anymore. The other thing I want to show you though, and this is really helpful when you're showing homes, and that's why I want to show it to you. And I also want to upload it. House hunting checklist. And this, let's see. Do you see 24450 Woodson at the top?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, great. So here's the deal on that one. This is something, basically I stole a lot of this because I loved it. And what I've done is I also have a blank one at the top, so you can just leave it for whatever and write it in. But I copy and paste, just literally, this is from the MLS print sheet. I copy and paste this in there and bingo, that's it. But when we go looking for a home, let's let somebody like, oh, let's say we're looking at 5 homes in a day. Then they can go ahead and rate everything. And what do they think? Was it good? Was it bad? Was it, you know, excellent? What else? Blah, blah, blah. All the different things in there. And then there's an overall rating at the bottom. And this helps your buyers to understand, because what's going to happen is your buyers, some of your buyers are going to be the type like, I am going to plow through all the homes on that list. I saw 10 homes that you sent me. Let's go see all 10. Once you hit home number 5, it starts to blur for buyers. It starts to become like, oh, and it may be that they remember, oh, well, yeah, that home had the, you know, beautiful orange laminate, you know, countertops that we definitely want to rip out. Okay. But they may not remember, well, how did the home, what was the layout of the home? And then there is that, as you guys have experienced, I'm sure, you'll go into a home and what you see on the photos and then you experience when you walk into the home are 2 different things. And they're going to do the same thing. Well, if they've looked at 5 homes, all that experience kind of gets meshed and it gets lost. So first, I would tell your buyers as a service to them and tell them exactly what I just told you. Hey, once you start seeing 5 homes, they all start to blur together. And now I had, in fact, the buyers I told you a year ago in December that I helped them buy a home. We had one day where they wanted to go see 6 homes. And I said, okay, but I warned them. I said, guys, remember, we've done this before and some of it's going to start to blur. And so you definitely need to take notes. And they're like, yeah, we know, Rob. But I wanted to cap it and even let them know, like, hey guys, you can only see so much and take it in. Plus, then it's really hard for them to make decisions. Now, some realtors out there will say, look, you need to pick your top 3, and then we're only going to see the top 3. And that's their approach. And there's reasons behind it. You know, the idea like, hey, if there's top 3, then they're going to only choose from one of those. But regardless of the approach you use, having a list like this really helps to refine it. You know, what did they think of everything? And as you can see, it goes all the way from anything to the condition. What did they like? What did they not like? The things in the home. What about the AC system? What about, you know, if it had a fireplace, if it didn't have a fireplace, you know, all those things. You can put in notes. You can put in the neighborhood. You can put how it felt, and then you can put the overall rating. And again, the reason why I really like putting something together like this is, one, it also makes you look really, really professional, because all of a sudden, you know, they're like, oh, you're going to see a home, and like, here is your guide to looking at this home. And as you can see, it's super easy, especially, you know, if you just copy and paste the info at the top, or, you know, you use this list and it's blank. It's super easy to do. Now, I'm saying all this stuff and you're like, okay, Rob, but you know, we don't have this. So right now I'm gonna, I should have the, where's my generic one? Yay, okay. So I just uploaded the generic version. So now you can take this list without any of the MLS information on it or my Photoshop photo of myself, and you can use it for your own purposes. And it's a simple PDF, so you can bring it into Canva, you can bring it into anything, you know, and make it all pretty, and so on. But again, the great thing about I like using a list like this, there's a few things, is that it's a great presentation. It also helps them to narrow this stuff down. And like when I copy and paste this stuff at the top, it makes it really easy just to know, oh yeah, this is the home and blah, blah, blah. Sometimes what I've done, or what you might need to do, if you print out the flyer from the MLS and then print on this double-sided, well, the one side is generic and has a house hunting checklist, but then the other side is actually the MLS flyer that has, again, all the same information. You know, the size of the home, the beds, the baths, the price, all of that kind of stuff. So you can still do it that way. And then what I've done is when I've done these sort of things, I have done it where, let's say I mentioned, you know, I've had those buyers that we were looking at, usually 5 homes and that one time 6 homes. So what I would do is I would do a house hunting checklist for each one of those homes. Then I stapled them together and put it just in, you know, a simple little one of those slide it in binders, you know, nothing, literally you go to Dollar Tree and 3 of them are $1. Well, now $1.25, but you know, you put them in there and it just makes a great presentation. And, you know, it just is, hey, you're a professional and this is your presentation. It also helps them to narrow things down, give feedback, and so on. So this was the final tool I was going to say, because what you're helping buyers do, you're not making the decision for them, but you're a guide in helping them understand all the different factors and all the different things that go into making that decision, and then help them to make that decision. That will help them, you know, narrow these things down. That will help them to understand what is going on. They're taking a lot in at once, and so then you're the one that's guiding them. Any questions?
I just have a question on multiple offers.
Go for it.
And then is it okay to ask the selling agent how much the offer's at right now?
You can ask.
Okay.
You know, are they going to tell you? No. Or I shouldn't say no, but
And they can't ask you. They can't tell you though, right?
they can. You know, I mean, it's not private information. Just a listing agent isn't going to divulge that. They may hint, and this is where phone conversations are incredibly more valuable than texting or email. Because if you were to, Ashley has a buyer, Ashley were to call me up and says, hey, Rob, we see that your home, you know, you have it listed for $699,000. I'm sure you got multiple offers because, you know, it's a great home and it's showing well and it's priced right. So if we were to submit an offer, are you guys currently above $720,000? Now, if she sends that in a text or an email and I answer like yes or no, then technically that's recorded. You know, that's information that like I just put in there. No, we don't have an offer above 720. We would love an offer above that. Oh, well, then she may say, oh, we'll put one in for 715. My fiduciary duty is to my seller. So I may be compromising what could have been a higher offer by doing that. However, Ashley calls me up and asks me that same question. I have answered questions like this before, and I've said, well, I don't want to compromise my seller, as you know, it's just as you don't want to compromise your buyers. However, I can tell you, we do have some offers headed close to that mark. So we are planning to counter offer And if you were to come in at that mark, you would definitely at least receive a counter offer at this point. So that at that time, nobody's compromising anything, but it tells Ashley what she needs to know to advise her buyers. Sometimes, and sometimes I had a listing down in Huntington Beach, and somebody had asked me, they said, well, have you guys hit 850? And it was well above, our list price was $799. And I said, actually, yes, we have hit 850 now. And because at that point, I'm not compromising my seller's fiduciary duty, because we're already at 850. Okay. And that let that buyer know, hey, if you want a competing offer, you got to be better than 850. So there's not an obligation, but that's where it's great to have a conversation, because you're trying to find out what is going to get your buyer the best deal. Same time, the listing agent is going to try and find out what is the best offer that I can get for my seller. Does that help, Gabe?
Yeah. I just kind of wanted to know how that conversation goes.
Yeah. And there's many times with a buying agent, if they call me on a listing and I don't want, to go down on email or text, I will call them back and we'll have a conversation. And I got a home that way in Highland Park for my buyers, having conversations like that, because also you build rapport. It shows that you're communicating. But I asked at one time, I said, okay, I asked this agent, I said, Elizabeth, I know we're in competition right now. We're looking at putting down, at the time, I said, we're looking at putting down, our initial offer was 1.75, and I knew we were getting countered. And I said, do we need to be at 1.85 or above to even be in the running? And she said, at least. Okay, that let me know, was anything really told, numbers? No, in the sense of like, this is going to get you or not. But that let me know when she said at least, like, oh, even 185, we're in heavy competition. So we actually got the home, but we were at 185 and we did an escalation clause to 1.95. And even at that point, my conversation with my buyers were, at what point are you going to be comfortable losing this home? You need to tell me at what point are you going to be okay where if the home goes above this price point, it's like, hey, that's too rich for our blood anyway. There's no way we could afford that. And that's when they came up with 1.95. Because in those situations too, people respond more to pain than they do to pleasure. So when you introduce the pain of, listen, you're going to lose this home at a certain price point. What is that price point? And at the same time, had it gone up to, let's say, 2.15 million, my buyers would have been like, hey, we gave it our best shot, but that was just too much for us too. So you've already kind of had that conversation with them. But they'll respond to that. And that's how I presented it. And both of these, the couple, they're both lawyers. And you never make assumptions, because, I knew it's like, let me ask them, what price point are you okay with losing this home? And they really, really wanted the home. And so that's when they came in at the 1.95. And we got the home, but we squeaked in. I mean, literally, we kind of squeaked in. And some of it I know was because I had conversations with that other agent. I promised her it was going to be a very smooth transaction for her sellers. And because I kept on having conversations with her, she knew that we were going to follow through with that. And we did, by the way. In fact, I wanted to give her a thank you gift. And she said, no, honestly, just how smooth everything went was the thank you enough. Okay, any other questions on this? Okay, guys.
This was helpful. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Great job today. And I'll try to cover the start to finish of a full transaction next week.
Oh,